Welcome back to the Badass Literature Society, where badasses come together to rate and review novels recommended by you. Hi, I'm Michael.
This is Barbara.
And I'm Lauren. This month we read The Best Way to Bury Your Husband by Alexia Casale.
Let's talk a little bit about her first. A British-American citizen of Italian heritage, Alexia is an author, editor, and writing consultant. She also teaches English literature and writing. After getting her master's degree in social and political sciences, then M.Phil in educational psychology and technology. Lauren, do you know what that is? What is an M.Phil degree?
Masters of Philosophy, probably.
Masters of Philosophy. Okay,
Maybe.
both at Cambridge University.
Guessing.
She took a break from academia and moved to New York. There, she worked on a Tony Award-winning Broadway show before returning to England to complete her PhD and teaching qualification. In between, she worked as a West End script critic, box office manager for a music festival, and executive editor of a human rights journal. And after reading this again, I would really like to have Alexia on the podcast because I feel like she's lived a very interesting life, and it'd be interesting to talk to her about all that. She's not sure also which side of her family her dyslexia comes from, but it is resigned to the fact that madness runs in both. She loves cats, collects glass animals and interesting knives, and has always wanted a dragon, just like Barbara.
That's the best bio that we've ever had.
That's her bio. I got that.
That's awesome.
That's her own written bio. That is awesome. I was looking forward to reading it, but it's been long enough that I'd forgotten exactly what it said. That was incredibly entertaining, and it would be fun. I feel like I would love talking to her. That's so many cool things that she's gotten to do in her career.
She's not a horse girl.
Anyway,
she's
Barbara,
a dragon girl.
Dragons and knives.
Right. I feel you, girl. I feel you.
You want to tell us a little bit about the book itself, Barbara?
Sure. This was originally published on March 14th, 2024. The genre are dark comedy, thriller, suspense, and cozy mystery. I'm not really sure about the cozy aspect, but sure, okay. It is 384 pages, and it currently has a 3.73 on Goodreads and a 4 on Amazon. The other ones, there was not enough data to give a score on those. So as of this podcast recording, it has not been nominated or won any awards. Keep in mind that this just came out, so it's relatively still new. We also think it's important for readers to know what, if any, representation is in the books we read. So for this book, there are in the ensemble cast POC characters, one LGBTQ plus character, and no characters with disabilities.
All right, Lauren, do you want to give us the back of the book summary?
A dark comedy about 4 women coming together to heal the damage their husbands have done and hide their bodies once they've killed them. When Sally kills her husband with a cast iron skillet, she's more fearful of losing her kids than of disposing of a fresh corpse. That just wouldn't be fair, not after 20 years of marriage to a truly terrible man. But Sally isn't the only woman in town reaching the brink. Soon, Sally finds herself leading an extremely unusual self-help group, and among them there are 4 bodies to hide. Can they all figure out the perfect way to bury their husbands and get away with it? First to join is former nurse Ruth, who met her husband as a single mom. Now her son is grown, and her husband's violence builds by the day until an attack on the stairs leads to a fatal accident for him. A few doors down, Samira's last straw comes when she discovers her husband is planning a campaign of violence against their eldest daughter, who has just come out. Janie, Sally's best friend, has just had their first child at 42. Sleep-deprived Janie needs a hero to slay the monster in the fairy tales she whispers to her daughter each night. And as her husband's violence escalates, it might just be her. Together, fueled by righteous anger but tempered by a moral core, the 4 women must help each other work out a plan to get rid of their husbands for good. Along the way, Sally, Ruth, Samira, and Janie rediscover old joys and embark on new passions in work, education, and life. Friendship and laughter really are the best medicine, and so is getting away with murder.
It is a fun back of the book. I'll give it that. So what did you think about The Best Way to Bury Your Husband? And remember, no spoilers.
So I'm a little torn on this book. I do have to commend the author on writing about how violence towards women is an issue and it increased during COVID times. But I was expecting a dark comedy, and it just seemed dark with not much humor. With the back of the book, like there's a lot of humor thrown in the back of the book, and I think maybe it was just because my expectations were a little high with the promise of dark comedy. And I just want to give a shout out to Bat Sisters on Apple Plus. It's an amazing show, so if you're looking for dark comedy, that is the ticket right there. So I was expecting something more like that, and when it didn't deliver, I was left a little disappointed, and it was a bit slow for me and dragged a little in the middle. And the other thing was also the book is first person Sally's point of view, and we get a few chapters of the other women introducing them and what happened in their story. And I was expecting more of that, but then after those chapters, it's just Sally. So I think maybe I would have liked it a little bit more if it would have been the other women's point of views as well. But I can get into that later on.
Yeah, I mean, I was also a little bit torn on the book. I agree with Barbara that it's an important issue to write about, and it's a tricky thing to write about. And I think that the author approached all of that in a way that was both, shining an important bright light on this issue, while also handling it lightly enough that it's not, you know, not as heavy of a read as it could be, as I'm sure some other books are that deal with this kind of, these topics. But I think, just like Barbara said, my expectations were also this was going to be more dark comedy. It technically is dark comedy, but there wasn't as much of that dark humor that I was hoping for in the book for me. Not to say it was a horrible book or anything, but I think I really wanted that that dark humor, and I think this was a topic that could have been handled in a way that would have been a way to make this important conversation a little bit easier to swallow with more of that. And so I was looking forward to that. Based on the back of the book that we had, I thought there'd be more of it than there was. So yeah, that also left me a little bit disappointed. I also agree that there were times of the book where it dragged a little bit. Not to the point that I was like gonna, if this wasn't a podcast book, I would have DNF'd it or something, because it wasn't that bad. But there were definitely times where and I think it was around the middle too, Barbara, that I put the book down and I was like, oh, I've got to keep reading, and so that's never a great sign. But to be honest, when getting to complete the book, I am glad that I did finish it and didn't DNF it. We'll get into that a little bit more later. But just my surface level thoughts about the book.
I liked this one. I thought it was entertaining. I liked the way that it spoke on domestic violence and the way that it increased during COVID. I think that that was important, like an important piece of information that a lot of people don't think about. And this was a good way to kind of shed light on that in like I don't know, I'll talk about that a little bit more later. I enjoyed the sense of humor throughout. I thought the dry humor was entertaining. A lot of like the little quips that were said throughout about like just making light of the fact that she murdered her husband, or like just throughout there was a lot of like little offset comments that were said that I laughed at. It maybe wasn't just like cover to cover dark humor, but I definitely thought that they did a good job incorporating it. So it was interesting to read or to hear that you guys didn't see that part, which is fine. But yeah, I thought it was good overall, and I don't really I felt like the pace was good. It was a really short book, so it didn't really drag for me.
All right, so we're not going to go into our individual ratings for now. Like always, got to wait for that. But our group score for this book ended up being a 6.5 out of 10. So would you recommend this book? That's an interesting question. And I think that my answer to it is going to be similar to a lot of books we read for this podcast, to be honest. I think that there are some people I would recommend it to, and there are other people that I wouldn't. Like Lauren said, it is a short read. It's also about an important topic, so I don't want to diminish that by any means. So I think that there is a group of people I would recommend this to, that enjoy the murder mystery. Well, this isn't a murder mystery, but people that enjoy like that genre, I think would probably enjoy this also. So I would recommend it. I would probably recommend it with a caveat, and just let people know like my honest opinion, just like I did a moment ago with you two. But that's not to say that I don't think it's a book that that should be read and is an important read. So I would recommend it to some people.
I feel like I would recommend it overall. I mean, it's not super genre specific. I enjoyed it. I would definitely give a content warning about the domestic violence and murder pieces, just because there are some like descriptions and things about that might bother some people. But despite the dark subject matter, I feel like the humor that they kind of weaved throughout, though maybe not as frequent as anticipated, and then the relationships forged between the women made it just an enjoyable read for me. It was an easy read. It was short. It was dark, but I feel like it wasn't as heavy as it could have been because of kind of the humor that she tried to incorporate. So
I'm not sure. I think I could recommend this book, but with a warning that it's not super dark comedy, nor suspenseful, nor much of a thriller. It has its comedic moments. I'm not saying that it doesn't. It does, because I found myself chuckling and laughing at parts, but it's so few and far between, with some really dark themes throughout, that I wasn't expecting that. So I would recommend that, but I, like you guys both mentioned, I would say with this, like, don't expect A, B, and C. That this is more of what the book is actually. But like Laura mentioned, I really did enjoy the friendship between the women, and sometimes I feel like books lack that, and or either they lack it all completely, or they don't do a very good job of portraying the friendship between women. I think this one did a very good job of that. So I will commend that for the friendship portrayal of all the women.
That's a good point, Barbara. I think that the camaraderie and the relationships between the women was probably my favorite part of the book. Okay, so for those of you leaving us at this point, don't forget to be giving us a rating if you like us, and make sure you're leaving a review if the podcast app you're using allows you to. Super important. Not only does it give us feedback, but it helps this podcast get seen by more people, and it lets us reach more ears. Also, make sure you're following us on both Facebook and Instagram. Our handle there is at Badass Lit Pod. We would love to hear from you. If you've got a book you want us to read, please let us know. Now, Lauren is going to give us a short preview of what's coming up next month. Next month, we are reading Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sue Lin Tan.
Growing up on the moon, Xing Yin is accustomed to solitude, unaware that she is being hidden from the feared celestial emperor who exiled her mother for stealing his elixir of immortality. But when Xing Yin's magic flares and her existence is discovered, she is forced to flee her home, leaving her mother behind. Alone, powerless, and afraid, she makes her way to the Celestial Kingdom, a land of wonder and secrets. Disguising her identity, she seizes an opportunity to learn alongside the Emperor's son, mastering archery and magic, even as passion flames between her and the prince. To save her mother, Xing Yin embarks on a perilous quest, confronting legendary creatures and vicious enemies across the earth and skies. But when treachery looms and forbidden magic threatens the kingdom, she must challenge the ruthless celestial emperor for her dream, striking a dangerous bargain in which she is torn between losing all she loves or plunging the realm into chaos. A captivating debut fantasy inspired by the legend of Chang'e, the Chinese moon goddess, in which a young woman's quest to free her mother pits her against the most powerful immortal in the realm. Daughter of the Moon Goddess begins an enchanting, romantic duology which weaves ancient Chinese mythology into a sweeping adventure of immortals and magic, where love vies with honor, dreams are fraught with betrayal, and hope emerges triumphant. Sounds good.
I'm so excited.
It does. So I am too. Oh, did you already start it, Barbara?
Yes.
Nice. All right. Remember, the second part of this episode is going to be an in-depth look at this book, The Best Way to Bury Your Husband. So if you do want to read that, stop listening now and come back once you're done. Nom Nom is fresh dog food made by real people who really care. They're purposeful and enthusiastic about giving your dog the best food for them and their health, so they can thrive and be their best. Nom Nom delivers fresh food made with whole ingredients backed by veterinary science. And science tells us that dog health starts in the bowl, so improving their diet is one of the best ways to help them live a long, happy life. All you have to do is order, pour, and serve. Barbara and I have 2 dogs, Luna, a husky, and Quinny, a Shih Tzu mix. Our 2 dogs love the beef mash recipe, but to be honest, I'd say Quinny's favorite is the turkey fare. She drools when that comes out of the fridge. Yes, I know, Luna. I'm going to tell them about that right now. Luna is an extremely picky eater and always has been. She usually takes forever to warm up to new food, but not with Nom Nom. She dove in immediately. Both dogs seemed to have more energy, and Luna's stools were no longer soft. Your dog's health starts in the gut. A better diet means softer coats, more energy, better breath, and smaller, more consistent stools. Your dog can't tell you if they're healthy, but you can tell when their health improves. It's the easiest way to take the guesswork out of feeding your dog the best. Nom Nom meals are pre-portioned for your dog's exact caloric needs. Board-certified vet nutritionists are kind of a big deal, and Nom Nom has 2 on staff that work extensively to ensure everything gets sent out is the very best for your dog's livelihood. So how does Nom Nom work? You tell them about your pup, age, breed, weight, allergies, and protein preferences. Then they tailor a specific amount of individually packaged Nom Nom meals and send them straight to you. Store the meals in the freezer or fridge until it's mealtime. They'll give you specific instructions on how to transition your dog from foods like kibble to always fresh Nom Nom for best results. Watch your dog clean their dishes, dance for dinner, and overall thrive. Ready to make the switch to fresh? Order Nom Nom today. Go to a link in the description of this episode and then use our referral code BADASSLIT. That's BADASSLIT and get 50% off your first order plus free shipping. Plus, Nom Nom comes with a money-back guarantee. If your dog's tail isn't wagging within 30 days, Nom Nom will refund your first order. No fillers, no nonsense, just Nom Nom. Now, for those of you sticking around for the spoilers, here we go. As always, we're going to start our second half of this podcast by declaring the Badass Character Award winner. Barbara, who is your nomination for the Badass Character Award this time?
I would pick either Edwina or Layla. I love their dry humor, and they're mostly the ones bringing the comedy in the book, I feel like, and I just absolutely love their characters. They were my two favorites out of the non-core group. I don't know if I'm saying her name right. I said Edwina. I don't know. Is that how?
Edwina, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. It's funny. I hadn't seen either of you guys' notes on this since I made the document, and it's funny, Barbara, because those were literally the two people I was going to mention. Like, Edwina is my real pick because I think she's the OG badass in this book, and we'll obviously talk about her some more later. But I also thought that like Leela was probably my second favorite character. Like she was such a badass in her own right. But Edwina is my official nomination for the Badass Character Award.
I too picked Edwina. I feel like she's the truest badass because she's like the OG, and you don't really. I mean, there's a question on this later, but technically, you may not know how much of a badass she is until the end. But
true.
I feel like throughout, I liked her, and then I also commended Sally for her perseverance and willpower. So honorable mention for Sally, but congratulations, Edwina.
Edwina, you have won the Badass Character Award. Please send us an email, and we'll get that plaque over to you right away.
Yes, we will.
You can hang it above the cherry tree in your garden.
Yes, under the memorial.
Yep. Where she won at life.
Anyway, let's talk a little bit about the characters in this book before we jump into our questions. So the main character, I think, is definitely Sally. Which one of you would like to talk about Sally? I'm going to say Lauren, because Lauren actually voted for her as a sub-badass character. So Lauren, why don't you talk a little bit about Sally for us?
I can talk about Sally. So Sally is kind of our main character. She is our fearless leader, essentially. She's in a domestic violence relationship with her husband. They have kids that are no longer living at home. So like adult children, I guess, or her daughter's at least in college age, I think. The book kind of opens with her in the middle of a fight, essentially, with her husband. We learn that her husband has a very violent history. He has tended to be very abusive. And in the scene that we're getting to kind of witness through her perspective, I don't remember what it was he was mad about now, but
she didn't do his coffee right.
Oh, yeah.
He got mad about the littlest shit.
It was the wrong color.
The coffee, yeah, it was not, or I think it was tea, wasn't it?
Sorry.
Yes, it was, because they're in the UK.
Sorry, they're in the UK.
And yep. English people are very particular about their tea color. You have to have just the right amount of milk or not, whatever. Yep. So he was mad about that, and then ends up like putting her hand on the stove and like burning her. And there's like a frying pan on the stove, and she basically just whacks him in the head with the frying pan. And she didn't intend to kill him, I don't think, but that's what happened. So very much self-defense. That's what kind of kickstarts Sally's story. She ends up, and the whole thing is set during like COVID time. So when everybody is supposed to be social distancing, you're supposed to be isolated in your house. So she now then has a corpse that she has to figure out what to do with. And that is Sally. And then she leads the rest of them, later on. She kind of is the boss lady throughout.
The de facto leader for sure. Let's see. Barbara, do you want to talk about Ruth a little bit?
Sure. Ruth used to be a nurse, and she has a son, and then she gets married to I don't know. I said his name in my head like Lionel, but I know it's not Lionel. But that's how I said it because
I think it's just Lionel.
I
think
know
it's
it's
just
Lionel,
Lionel,
but
yeah.
I don't know why, I just kept saying like Lionel. So Lionel. And that's how I make humor for myself. Anyways, so she's married to Lionel. I can't say that without a straight face. Anyways, and she's also in an abusive relationship with him, and it's kind of the same old story, right? Like he gets in this violent match with her, and she runs up the stairs trying to get away from him because she knows it's gonna lead to something bad, and he chases after her, and she kicks him off, and he falls down the stairs, never to awaken again. And I feel like Ruth is the heart of the group. You know, she's very caring, very nurturing, and the medical one too, since she's the nurse, so she kind of helps the group with the medical questions and how to get that kind of stuff to do. And yeah, I feel like she's the heart of the group. She's the one who keeps them like tried and true. She's like, maybe this isn't like the correct way of doing this, or like, you know, she feels guilty. I think she's the one who feels the worst out of all of them of what they did to their husbands, and wants like a penance type thing.
Yep, I would definitely say that's an accurate description.
I love
Let's
Ruth.
see. Next in
Yes.
our gang of murderers is Samira. Samira is one of the other neighbors. She is. Do you know where exactly? I know she's of Middle Eastern descent, but did the book actually say where? Pakistan.
I thought that they talked about, yeah.
Yes.
Pakistan.
Pakistan.
They're Pakistani. So that's where her family is from. Her husband, unsurprisingly, for people that are familiar with the traditional culture of Pakistan and other countries in the Middle East, is very controlling and domineering, and they have ways that they're supposed to be, and you know, the whole arranged marriage thing and all of that. Samira essentially kills her husband because of what she's afraid is going to happen to their daughter. Because their daughter has recently come out, their daughter Leela, we talked about before as the potential badass award winner, come out of the closet, and in response to that, her husband is furious and wants to take the family to Pakistan and force her to be with some man to
arranged
try
marriage
to fix her, and so that leads Samira to murder her
I
husband.
mean, her husband was also abusive to her.
She was
as well.
She was. Yep. I would say of our core group of women that have murdered their husbands, she seems to have the most remorse for what she did. She's very morally torn between, like, obviously I think in her core she knows it was the right thing because she was protecting her kids and herself, but she really struggles with the fact that she did it too. So there's a
Ruth did too, though.
Ruth did too, but not. I think Samira's was just more obvious
Ruth had
because
a lot
of the jokes about the dead husband that the daughter would make,
Which
Leela
were
would make,
hilarious.
which were very funny. Like, that's the highlight of the dark humor in the book. And then you'd see Samira coming out and saying, "No, hey, whoa, no, we're sorry for his loss, yada yada yada." That's just a snapshot of Samira. Which one of you wants to talk about Layla?
So she is obviously the daughter of Samira. She's the oldest, right?
Yes.
And she so she comes out to her parents, like we just talked about, and then
not on purpose, though.
Right, not on purpose. And then I think Samira tries to protect the kids from what she did to the dad, and Layla finds out, and then Layla's kind of the in-between, I would say. Like, Layla's then responsible for like protecting the younger sister, who I can't remember her name right now. Miriam, from kind of being privy to everything that's going on. Layla insists on kind of being involved and helping and all of those things, and is just kind of caught in the middle of all of the kind of shitstorm, honestly. But she's a very mature. Yeah, I liked her.
High school junior, right?
Yes, I believe
she was in the process of like getting ready for college. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's see. Next character and the last one of our core group of women is Janie. Barbara, do you want to talk a little bit about Janie?
Oh man. So let me give a non-opinionated overview of Janie. Janie is Sally's best friend. They've been best friends since childhood. They grew up together, but Janie kind of exiles Sally after just getting frustrated with Sally not leaving her abusive husband. So they kind of cut ties with each other. And I think it's been like 5 years since they've actually like talked to one another. She recently has had a child, and her husband was all about gung-ho, let's have children, blah, 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 blah. And as soon as she gets pregnant and she isn't giving him 100% of her attention to him, he gets abusive. So out of all the marriages, I believe hers was the one that started later with the abuse. It wasn't until she got pregnant that he got crappy towards her, whereas the other ones, I think it was like pretty soon after getting married that the abuse started. Outside of that, Janie is the pessimistic out of the group. She always has little quips about how everything's going to go south, and she doesn't have a very grand outlook in life. I don't blame her, given the fact that she just had a child and her husband was a D-bag to her throughout the whole process.
I suppose it's appropriate that the order has lined up for me to talk about the husbands, which are listed all together as the next character. So the husbands are, I would say, pretty minor characters in this book. We obviously get some flashbacks to the things that they did, and we obviously the book is primarily told in first person from Sally's perspective. The only time it's not in first person from Sally's perspective is when we're getting a third person view of the situation and the scene when the other women murder their husbands and why. So the husbands are Jim, Sally's husband, Keith, Keith is Janie's husband, Lionel is Samira's husband, and Yafir is Ruth's husband. Did I get that right? No.
Oh my God. Okay.
Oh my
Jim
God.
is Sally. Jim is Sally. Keith is
order.
Janie. Lionel is Ruth, and Yafir is Samira's.
Yes.
Dang.
Yes,
dude.
that's true. All right. So as far as the husbands, that's them. Jim is Sally's husband. We get very little about little of him while he's alive, I guess. We get the scene at the very beginning of the book where she kills him, and we get all sorts of stories about how big of an a-hole he is. And the author, I think, did a really good job at, even though the husbands weren't like major characters in the story, inserting them into everything in a way that we got to understand like how, not evil, that's not the right word, I guess, but how negatively they impacted all these people's lives. Like Jim, for example, he's in one chapter, but we constantly are talking about like how, his son is afraid to call, their son is afraid to call their mom because they're afraid that the husband's going to answer and he's going to throw a fit and be a butthead and then hurt or yell at the mom afterwards. Keith, we get the most of, Janie's husband, because we have a couple of chapters about Janie before she actually does the deed. So I mean, it's the way that the husbands were intertwined while not being intertwined I thought that was a really, really fascinating, very talented on the author's perspective to, even though we don't see a lot of their time alive, we get a good perspective on why these women did what they did and what they lived with before they did. And then our final character is Edwina, and I'm going to let Barbara talk about Edwina because I think that will be the most entertaining.
Oh, no. Well, I mean, Edwina is Sally's across from neighbor, and she's what the book wants you to think is a stereotypical, like, nosy neighbor
like
who's like the Karen. Like, this would be the Karen, like constantly checking, like, if people are social distancing, you can't be outside for more than an hour to do your outside walk or whatever, exercise and stuff like that. Like, she's very to the book, like, this is how you do things, you cannot stray away from this. But like, if you read Edwina through Sally's point of view, you're gonna miss the subtleties of like her humor, her dry sense of humor, and how she literally is guiding Sally because she knows she's very smart and she knows exactly what Sally and the rest of the girls or the rest of the women did. And it's like, it's an inside joke just between her because she's like, I know what y'all did. So then she's like slowly trying to help them without telling them, I know what you did. And then at the very end,
their gardening mentor all throughout. Like,
exactly.
She's like a pro gardener. And so like Sally's like asking her for like, she said, oh, I started a gardening club during COVID with these ladies. And so they think that Edwina just thinks that they're like gardening the whole time. She's like,
more. Yeah. What I'm curious to know is like, I feel like Edwina knew what was going on behind closed doors with Sally and Jim, and she's trying to protect her in the only way she knew how without getting involved, because you just never know. Like, I'm sure it's one of those things where it's like, what if you do too much and then he's gonna take it out on Sally and she doesn't want to cause that, so it's like she was trying to, like, I feel like in a very subtle way help Sally with Jim. And then obviously we get the reveal that she was also in an abusive marriage and murdered
Took care
her
of it.
husband. Yeah, she was the OG. When we meant by OG, she was the first one that did this.
Yes, she was.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, Barbara, that she was trying to do whatever she could without making too many waves and hurting someone that she was trying to, in some ways, in her own way, protect, and she knew how that was.
Well, she probably overheard fights and things over the course of time, so she probably had a good idea when the house got quiet and now you're all of a sudden gardening that.
Right.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're doing all this stuff without Jim. Like, he was always the one who was super controlling and would leave the house and didn't let her. Now all of a sudden she's leaving the house. She's like,
Yeah, no, that's true. Anyway, we can move on to our discussion questions now. The first one is, the novel deals with serious issues like domestic violence and female empowerment. How effectively does Alexia Casale balance these themes with the dark comedy elements of the story?
I feel like it's a hard line to walk between the serious issues and the comedy. And I was expecting a lighter book and not so heavy on the dark themes to the back of the book. Like, yes, it mentions domestic violence, but I didn't think it would lean so much on the seriousness of it. So I think calling this a dark comedy did it a disservice, because if I would have known, like, yes, it's got a bit of humor and stuff like that, but if it was more of like, hey, this is a serious issue, I'm going to bring light to it, I think I would have gone with a different perspective, or a different, what is the word I'm looking for? I guess, whatever. Yeah, I think given how the book was written, I feel like if she would have put too much light elements and comedy, I think it would not have come off well. I think it's either this is the balance, and either you lighten up on the seriousness of it to give in to the humor of the thing, or go what she did, which is just like, here's like the reality of these situations with a little sprinkleness of the comedy. So in that regard, I think she did the best that she could with how she wrote the book. I was just expecting something different, and because of that, I think that's why I felt the way I did about the book overall.
I would definitely agree with a lot of what you said. I think that, like, exactly like Barbara said, it's a very thin line, and I think that it's the author understood the importance of telling this story about women's empowerment and women's camaraderie and dealing with domestic violence in situations that are all too common. And I think that while, like Barbara, I was expecting more dark comedy from the book, and I think that that's because of the back of the book description. The back of the book definitely makes it feel like it's going to be a lot heavier on the comedy. I do think that the author did a really good job at balancing that fine line and inserting some comedic elements, because, like Barbara said, there were definitely moments where I did laugh as I was reading it, but there were also moments where I was like, oh my God, and like, shocked. And there was definitely some suspenseful moments too that we'll get into later. But I think that overall the author did a really good job at balancing that. It's a very tricky thing to balance such a serious topic of domestic violence with and making it lighthearted still, and fun to read. And I think that at the end of the day, she did a good job balancing that.
Yeah, I feel like it was balanced well. I think the balance allowed for certain people to be able to connect with the dark subject in an easier way. I don't think subjects like this should or have to ever be filtered through a lighter lens, but in this situation, it was really well done, and I think it was probably an attempt to appeal to a wider crowd. I also just feel like a lot of people resort to humor as a form of coping with difficult things, and so this was kind of how I read it, especially like Sally, just throughout. Like, she would make comments like throughout the whole thing that I would just like chuckle at. Like, she would say, oh, like, Jim would hate this. Oh, well, I guess he can't because he's in the wrapped up in this tarp desiccating, like, like just dark comments that I guess you could read them as not funny, but I thought they were kind of funny. Maybe that's just my morbid sense of humor, I guess. It's kind of like part of it's like, oh, if you don't laugh, you'll cry, sort of thing. And so that's how I read it, was okay, a lot of people can relate to the sense of using comedy or making light of things in order to cope with heavy shit. So
Yeah, and I think that just to add on to that a little bit, I think that making it, and because I agree with you, Lauren, that you don't have to make light of these serious topics to tell a good story about them. But I think that in some ways that maybe expands the people who will read the book, because I think that there are a lot of people, like for example, and I want to be clear, I'm not throwing Barbara under the bus at all here. Like, but I know that Barbara thinks these stories are super important, and it's important that these stories get told. But I know on the same token, when when she reads, she's trying to escape and get out of the depressing times that we live in, and so sometimes she's not the person, and I do the same thing. She's not the person who will go and pick up a book that's about a super serious, heavy, real life thing, because when we read, we want to get away from the heavy real life things. And so by making this more of a dark comedy, I think for people like Barbara and I, where we'll be more likely, even outside of a podcast setting, to read a book that has a lighter, dark comedy spin to it than just a serious tone. So I think that that's a good way to get
right.
more people to read it. And hopefully that was okay, Barbara. Did I describe that appropriately without
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I mean, I like the book. If I would have known the theme would have been that, I feel like I have to mentally prepare myself for stuff, and I was not mentally prepared for this. I was mentally prepared for like a lighter book. I was not prepared for that. So it would have been nice to have known that, I think, going into the book, and how heavy the subject matter. Like, not to say, like, obviously it's mentions in the back of the book, like, like it's domestic violence and they murder their husbands. But like, I have watched things where it's still about this, but they don't go into such detail about what is happening and stuff like that. And they make it, I don't know. I don't know if I'm even making any sense or anything like that, but yes.
You are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally making
sense. I mean,
sense.
I think, the back of the book talks about domestic violence and talks about kind of those pieces. So I was mentally prepared for that in a way, but I don't know that that it prepares people for like maybe the descriptions of like, I think what you're saying is like, what is it? There's a Netflix show that is similar to this. I can't think of what it is right now, but it's much more like humor based versus, I feel like this is more dark with humor weaved in versus like funny with dark weaved in, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
And
kind of like the show Barbara mentioned earlier.
Yes, like Bad Sisters literally is like a group of sisters. One sister is married to a terrible husband, and the other sisters group together and say, okay, we have to murder him and make it look like an accident. And like each episode is them trying to murder him, and it's like, haha, but like really it's not. But like I was expecting that kind of a theme, or the tone of the book to be more like that, and not this. Once again, I'm not saying that is bad. Just wondered, would have been nice to know.
Yeah, no, I totally understand what you're saying there. Let's see. Next question. How do Sally, Ruth, Samira, and Janie evolve throughout the novel? What key moments contribute to their character development? Gosh, that's a really deep question that I came up with. So they really do. They evolve a lot, and I think that, like I was saying before, the friendship and the relationships between the core group of women was my favorite part of this story, and so seeing the development of all of them both together and separately was also probably my favorite part of the book. And so they start off as kind of, this is going to sound horrible, but kind of what you would expect for women in their situation. They are broken. They have been kicked down their whole life. They have been made to feel small and said that is how they should be, is small and secondary and not important. And so it was really, really inspiring and cool to see these women kind of, in some cases, find themselves again. Like in the case of Sally and Janie, especially. Sally had been molded down to this tiny, tiny, tiny version of herself. And to see her after her husband died start kind of coming out of her shell and remembering the things that she used to love and the things that made her happy before. And, hearing her talk about her best friend Janie that she'd had falling out with, and like how much that hurt her that she lost this friend, and then to see their relationship kind of come back together, and then to find out why the relationship fell apart. And it was just the characters made this book for me. And so to see them grow both separately and together, it was a beautiful thing. I really enjoyed watching these women find themselves again. And Sally has a thing. She's making these lists, and one of them is like a list of the things she has to do to get rid of Jim's body, which is the serious part. And then the other one is a list of things she's going to do to make herself happy. And it's little stuff, but it was really awesome to see the growth of these women finding themselves again, and remembering that there's more to life, and at the same time being heartbroken that they let these controlling asshole men keep them down for so long. I really enjoyed their character development, is what I'm trying to say. But so yeah, that's.
I feel like there's not a lot to add to that. That pretty well sums up what I was going to say too. I mean, watching them come from quite literally a victim perspective mindset, because they were being victimized over and over at home, to then becoming kind of more empowered, and then the empowerment that they have at the end, once they get away with it or whatever, it was enjoyable to see. I think, like Michael said, seeing them kind of develop confidence and finding themselves. Even like Ruth, I feel like throughout was kind of the one that needed to be reassured over and over. Like, she's like, I really should just be in prison, sort of thing. Like, she's feeling all this guilt for what she did, and Sally's like, no, like, he should have been in prison for what he did to you, and like, you were acting in self-defense, sort of thing. And I think seeing her finally, like, to the conclusion that, like, I was a victim, like, this wasn't, like, not that it's ever justified to take a life, but we'll talk about that later. But like, seeing her kind of come into, you know what, like, I was in a really bad situation and I am worth more than that, kind of thing. And just seeing all of their character arcs kind of coming into their own, I guess, again, and just the happiness and the lightness that she writes them with at the end versus the beginning was cool to see.
Yeah, I think this was done very well, where some books struggle to show the evolution of characters. I think the author did an amazing job of this. How they grow into themselves throughout the novel was very beautiful to see. I think that and their friendship were the two highlights for me reading the book, was just to see how they started at the beginning and their mindsets, to seeing them grow into themselves and allow themselves to be their true selves with each other, and then later on out in the world and stuff like that was awesome. I think she did a wonderful job at it.
And to Lauren's point, we're now going to talk about the justification. The women in this novel resort to murder to escape their abusive situations. How did this affect your perception of the characters, and do you think their actions were justified?
Honestly, I felt like most of their actions were justified. I feel like Samira's situation is probably the only one where I would question whether murder was a bit extreme. But the fact that she didn't really feel she had another option, I can empathize with that. And I guess this is another one later, but I can't pretend to understand culturally what that looks like for her, because I obviously have never lived in that culture. The only thing that I thought of was like, her situation wasn't like a physical self-defense thing like some of the other ones were. It was more of a feeling trapped in other ways and feeling like threatened in other ways and trying to protect her daughter. And that was just the only way that she kind of came up with to do that. I still feel like he deserved it to an extent. That was the only one that I thought, okay, like maybe there could have been an alternative to like fleeing the country, or, things like that, just to get away. But as far as affecting perception of the characters, I feel like from jump, we learned that, like, even from the back of the book, you kind of know that this is a thing. So it didn't really affect that for me. And so, yeah, I feel like personally in domestic violence situations, there should be lesser charges. I talked about this with another friend that read this book, but that should be taken into consideration when these things get to trial. But obviously I don't get to make those decisions. So
First off, I want to just preface this with, I don't like that we're using the word murder. it was self-defense for, I would say, 100% self-defense in 2 out of the 4 cases. 2 other ones, it's kind of like the blurry line there where it's like, was it not type thing, and we'll discuss that later. But so to call it, I don't like calling it murder. It's self-defense. So the issue isn't that they killed their husbands. The issue is that they didn't report it. That's what I have the issue with. Obviously, then if they did, we wouldn't have the novel. I'm not like trying to like say that. Like, obviously, I'm just trying to say, was it justified? Their actions were justified in that it was self-defense. Even I think Samira's. You have to remember that the culture that Samira comes from, like, and if you read the back of the book, and I remember reading the story where I believe it was the daughter of someone, or like I don't even know, maybe she was the wife, she's a very young wife to this guy, and she left and they murdered her. They literally murdered her because she left instead of like staying with him and being like, oh, okay, I'm okay with this. So with that in mind, her life and her children's life, especially Layla, is threatened because of that. So with all of this to say, like, is it ever justified? I don't yeah, I mean, I guess like in this sense, yes. The issue is their actions after aren't justified, like covering it up instead of just going to the police. And I'm not saying that what they did is wrong. Like, I get it. I mean, 9 out of 10 times, how do you prove that your husbands were abusing you? They haven't gone to the police before. They haven't.
Yeah, they never reported.
Right, they never reported it. I'm sure, like for Sally's reasoning, Jim would always hide where he hit her and bruised her. So it's like he knew to hide that. So, like places where people wouldn't see. So it's like that he was. So it's one of those things where it's like, how do you prove this? Like, how it's your word against a dead man's, And if you get here in the U.S., if you get a jury of people who don't believe you, it doesn't matter like how well the self-defense is or how well like this actually, it doesn't matter because people are going to say, nah, man, you did it on purpose. So it's like, I understand. I'm not saying I don't. All of this was justified. It's just, once again, I understand why they didn't go to the police. So it's one of those, it's hard, it's hard to
it's a moral gray area.
It is. And it's it's like the $1 million question that you see time and time again here in the US, where these women are going to jail for murdering their husband or their partner or their spouse because of this exact thing, where it was in self-defense, and they say like, hey, this has been going on, but it's like, how do you prove that? So it's that's what makes the book. That is like, here's the other side of the coin, is like, well, this is what you're going to get when women feel like they're not being listened to. They feel like they have to go to extremes to.
Yeah. I can't remember which documentary it was that we watched a while back, but it was essentially like a domestic violence situation, and the wife ended up defending herself, and she got caught. I mean, she wasn't trying to hide it. Like, it was a whole thing. And when she was interviewed later, like, she basically said that she feels safer in prison than she did in her home. So she's like, honestly, this is an improvement, which is just so sad. And
Yep.
like the fact that like she has to do that legally because that, that's just the way that it is. But also like, that's where I say, like, I feel like the judicial system should have some kind of clause for if there's like domestic violence, the abuse, the mental health piece, like, and obviously like, should they have consequences? Yes, but should it be the same as somebody who's just cold-blooded killer out there murdering innocent people? No. Like, I feel like there should be like some kind of lesser charge, like you do 1 or 2 years instead of life, like those sorts of things. But
yeah, I don't have much to add on top of what you guys said, to be honest, on this one. I think that in all of these situations in this book, the actions were justified. And I think that, like, if you look at this and just from just a strictly legal perspective, then the issue was that not that they did what they did, but that they chose to try to cover up their what they did afterwards. And I think that the fact that they felt like they had to do that instead of calling the police and saying, hey, A, B, and C has happened. This happened. It was in self-defense. I was fearing for my life. And they clearly did not trust the justice system to believe them. And I think that is the saddest part of this question, in that they felt like they needed to go to drastic ends to hide it because they were afraid that, like so many times before, the justice system would fail women.
And it probably would have, if we're honest.
And it probably would have in at least some of the cases. So I think that their actions were absolutely justified, and I have no issues saying that I think that the men in this story, the husbands, I guess I shouldn't say all the men, there are other men in the story that aren't bad, but the husbands in this story that got killed had it coming. Just my opinion, but I think they deserved it.
Q in Chicago's "They Had It Coming" song.
They had it coming. What a great song. Great musical. Anyway, next question. The book takes place during the COVID-19 pandemic. How do you think that setting / time frame affected the story? Do you think that was a good choice to set the novel during the pandemic?
Well, I mean, setting it during this time allows the characters to grow and figure out and resolve like how they're going to get rid of the body. Because like if I were to murder Michael tomorrow, like people are going to notice, like his job is going to notice. Like you can't. It's just one of those things where you can't. You just don't have the time anymore. This gave them the time to meet each other and figure out planning and all that stuff. For plot purposes, yes, it makes sense. I think the only problem is because it allowed for the time, that's where it kind of dragged a little for me in the middle, where it's like technically she had a fortnight to figure out what to do about Jim because he had to go into Rotary or whatever, his rotation at work or something like that.
Yeah, it was just his turn to go in. Yeah.
Right. So it made sense to do it. The only thing that I found humorous was the fact that they were so worried about the 6 feet. Like, y'all, you murdered your husbands. Like, at this point, does the 6 feet really matter? Does the social distancing, really, this is where we're gonna draw the line if we get fined? I just found that part
I wondered
humorous.
how much of it was that and how much of it was the police would be involved and then they would have to explain themselves, because over there
it was
they actually got ticketed, they got fines if they got caught without their family, if they got caught in a group. So they probably were, I read it more as yes, they were, well, was it Ruth? She was worried about the germs, and Edwina was more worried about infection, and the others were just we really don't need any interaction with the cops at this point.
True.
See, I thought that showed their real desperation to get out of a situation that they were in, is that these women were not bad people. They were law-abiding citizens. They were concerned and wanted to make sure they were following the rules. And we see that in the COVID stuff, because you're right. Someone who really doesn't give a shit isn't going to care about that either.
Right.
But I think that just shows that these were good people that were in a bad situation that were.
Oh my gosh, we're going to get in trouble for COVID violations, but also my husband's in the backyard.
Right. I guess my thing is if I'm going to go in, I'm going all in, I guess. But yeah, I understand. I thought that was a little funny, reading there, oh no, mustn't do this. I'm like, you just murdered your husband's stewing over there. Of all the things to worry about, that's the least thing I would be worried about. I'd be like, oh my God, what do I do now? He's I have a dead body I need to get rid of.
Yeah, that, yeah, that's 100% correct. And I think a lot of what Barbara said is pretty much what I have to think on the pandemic. I think that it not only gives it gives them time, like she said, but I think it also tells an important story about moments like that in history, because we saw a real spike in domestic violence during the lockdowns of COVID, when people were stuck in houses together. And so I think that being the background of this is not only important because it actually happened, but it also allows, it gave the characters, it amped things up. They were already in bad situations. Their husbands were already doing, for the most part, awful things to them. And the fact that it was happening all the time, every day, couldn't get away from it. The husbands were never leaving to go to work. They were never leaving to go do whatever they did in their free time. And I think that in some ways that pushed the women to do what they did, because maybe you could argue that them killing their husbands was an inevitability. But I think that if you argue that it was an inevitability, the fact that this was set during the pandemic just, put that into overdrive, because they were in a situation where they really felt like they couldn't get out, and there was no break and no time. And so, yeah, I think it was also just, since we just lived through this pandemic, it was interesting to read a book that was set during that too. So I thought it was interesting. I thought that was definitely a good way, or a good time to set the story.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like their situations were very much maybe an inevitability as far as somebody was going to die. It was just a matter of like them
That's
or
a really good point.
the husbands, because I
Yep.
feel like, I mean, the trajectory that all of their stuff was going on was going to result in fatalities one way or another. So it was like, pick your kill or be killed sort of thing. I've read several novels now that have taken place during COVID, which is just funny because it feels like, I don't know, weird to have lived through that, and then like now people are writing books about it, and it's just that was our normal. So like I think it's interesting to read novels set during that time period, having just kind of come out the other side of it. And like Michael said, I think it, for this particular story, it is important because mental health, domestic violence, like all of the things that were already problematic got even more problematic during the lockdown. And this really kind of speaks to that. And then also it obviously aided in the plot because people weren't seeing each other in person. So it was easier to say like, oh, he's sick, or he's, he's isolating for like those sorts of things. So they had a little bit of that being in their favor, in the sense of, now obviously like Michael works remotely, and if Barbara offed Michael, his job would know because he goes to work every day. Like she could maybe get away with it for his weekend, but like that's about it. It sounded to me like a lot of this situation was people were like maybe only working periodically. I don't know. At least for Jim, he wasn't set to work for like 2 weeks, like we talked about. And so I don't really know about the other ones, if Ruth's husband was retired maybe, or
No, he did landscaping and that kind of stuff, and people
okay.
weren't
I
doing
can't
that
remember
at
what
the
they
time.
came up with. Yeah.
And
For like some of the
Yafir
others, I know
was
that
a
Yafir was isolating.
he was a cab driver, so you shouldn't be really,
Yeah.
driving people around during the pandemic and all that stuff. So they all had jobs conveniently where
Conveniently, yes.
could be missing for a while without anybody wondering.
Yes.
Plus, Lionel was self-employed. Lionel
Yeah.
was self-employed.
Lionel.
Jim worked for like a tech company or something, right?
I don't remember. Yeah, I think that it was something like that where they were on like a rotation schedule, so he got away
Before
with
then,
it.
he was. What is it? It's not furlough. Is it called furloughed? Where like
Furloughed, yeah.
they were paying him, but like they weren't working.
Correct. Right. Okay, moving on to our next question. Sally becomes the de facto leader of the group. What qualities does she possess that make her a natural leader? How does her initial action of killing her husband influence the dynamics of the group? Interesting question. It's me, I think, right? Okay. So I think that Sally has probably always had the personality of a natural leader. When we got some of her flashback stories and her reminiscing memories with Janie and some of her friends from when she was younger and before she met Jim, I think that I think that for the most part, people that are a natural leader, like there's a reason they call it a natural leader and not a trained leader. Like I think she had some of those qualities to begin with. And I think that those qualities were dimmed by Jim because obviously if he's an abusive husband, he's not going to want a strong, independent wife. So I think that the fact that she is able to be in intense situations and make rational decisions, and the fact that she's clearly able to get people to listen to her and work with her, I think that those are the qualities that made her a natural leader. I don't know how her initial action of killing her husband influenced the dynamics of the group necessarily. I mean, I guess the fact that she murdered her husband and then she is able to tell these other women, hey, it's okay, you can confide in me. I killed mine too, I guess. But I mean, that's because I guess the connecting factor was they all killed their husbands. That was the thing that brought them all together, with the exception of her and Janie, but I guess technically it brought them back together. I feel like I'm rambling now, so I'm going to end my thought there. But those are my thoughts about how she became the leader, or why she was the leader.
Yeah, I feel like the qualities that she possessed that make her a natural leader. She's very perseverant. She has the ability to remain positive in shitty situations. Like, she was always trying to focus on, what was going well and not what wasn't, even in that dire situation. And then she was able to remain relatively calm in chaos, which is an important leadership quality. I think, every time things got a bit chaotic or people were panicking, she was always the one to kind of bring everybody back together. And then obviously her initial action of killing her husband was what connected her with the others to begin with. So I think.
So to me, Sally is the glue that holds the group together. She's the one who reaches out to everyone first, and she's the one who goes out of her way to try to help them. Like with Ruth, she's the one who's like, I saw her with the black eye, something's happening, and she was the one who took the initiative to go and be like, okay, not anymore. If I can do this, you can do this. So I think that's how she became the leader, is because she's the glue that holds everyone together and kind of assembled them together in the first place. Qualities is just like what you guys have mentioned. Like, she doesn't, it's funny because I feel like it's one of those people where like she couldn't do it for herself, but she's more than willing to help others with the same thing. And then finally she realized, like, if I can do it for other people, I can do it for myself type mentality.
Okay, so this is the fun question. What would you do if you had to dispose of a fresh corpse through non-official means? And would you ask for help?
Well, first of all, I feel like it's a little disturbing and concerning that Michael thinks this is fun. But alas.
I said earlier, I like dark humor. I feel like this plays into that.
Just know what happens to me,
Right. I plead the fifth on this one. Just kidding.
I would never share my real plan. Come on. Just kidding.
I feel like with all of the true crime things that I listen to and watch and documentaries, and this book is also kind of, directions almost for lack of a better term. I don't know what I would do if I was to have to dispose of a fresh corpse through non-official means. I think that's an odd thing to ponder. If I was in a domestic violence situation, I feel like it would look different than if I wasn't. And as far as would I ask for help, I feel like I have a good amount of people that I could call, and there would be no questions.
That's such a lawyer way of answering, but not answering a question. just in case someone's listening to our podcast, I will not be giving out the means of how I murder or how I would get rid of a corpse.
I feel like it would be situational, right? Like, It depends on what condition the corpse is in. Like, did I hit them with my car? Did I hit them with a frying pan? Are they already in pieces? Do I need to put them,
Right.
I don't think I would be capable of any of that, quite honestly. I think I would just cry and call the police and go to prison. But
I think it's like Lauren's like, do people actually sit here and like think about how they would dispose of body? And I'm just sitting here like, oh, is that not a normal thought? No, I'm just kidding.
Barbara's like, this is a daily thought.
This is a daily thought. I mean, yeah, am I the crazy person who just thinks up these magical situations of everything? Like, what if a dragon shows up and goes, "You're the chosen one, Barbara"? Would I go? Hell yeah, I would go. Like, those are the thoughts that happen in my head. So have I thought about how I would dispose? So I don't sit here and think about it, but like if I'm reading something or watching something and I see how they do it, I always think, oh, like maybe I would have done it this way, or like, oh, they should have done it this way, or like, wow, that's a really good way of doing it. So have those thoughts crossed my mind? Yes, I would be lying to say if I didn't. One of the things I can't remember what show we were watching, and I was like, oh God, that's so smart. Like in the Everglades or anywhere with animals that can eat people, like just dispose the body that way. I would be shocked if we don't find dead bodies hanging around in these locations. So yes, would I ask for help? I think it depends. Like if I was in an abusive relationship, I feel like yes, I would. If it was just to murder someone, I don't think so, because there's no justification for that. And I would be upset if I asked for help and my friends helped me when it was just a murder for shiz and giggles type thing. But like if it was in their situation, oh yeah, I'd be like, girl, say less. here's my shovel, what are we doing type thing, you know? So
I mean, so number one, I mean, you stole my answer partially because I was going to say that now that we're in Florida, you just wrap the body up in a tarp, drive to the a deep part of the swamp, and toss it into the water. Maybe bring some. Maybe you should stop at like Publix on the way and get some, some cheaper meat of some variety to toss in to get things going, and then roll the
But do they
body
eat
in.
the bones though? They don't eat the bones, so
They
you can
eat
still get
I have
calories.
no
they eat it
idea.
all.
I
They eat it all.
don't. I
Pigs
haven't
do. I know
Googled
pigs
that.
do. Pigs eat all of it.
Are we talking about gators? Do gators?
I'm talking about
Yeah,
gators.
do gators.
Yeah,
I'm saying like people. Apparently, I learned recently that you can feed a body to pigs and they eat the bones and everything. No,
who knew?
no trace of anything. But I didn't know if gators do too.
You
I
just
just
have to
Googled it.
remember
So now
that
I'm on a watch list.
how
But
long
yeah,
it takes for the body to expel that. So you have to keep that in mind as well.
True. I think I'm probably on all kinds of watch lists because I couldn't remember the name of the author for the longest time. So every time I would try, people would be asked like, "What are you reading?" or whatever in book club, and so I'd have to like look up How to Bury Your Husband or Best Way to Bury Your Husband. And
you
so
have to
I'm
put a novel.
book, yeah, novel. So I'm like, I'm probably on all kinds of watch lists.
That's funny. So the answer to your question is yes. Alligators can digest bones and swallow their prey whole. They have extremely acidic stomachs that allow them to digest bones, feathers, hair, and
Did you
scales.
just Google this?
I did.
Oh,
I mean, I knew
That's
it.
why he
I
said
feel
he's
like
probably on a watch now.
You needed me to prove it. So
I didn't need you to prove it. I just said I was not aware of this because I'm not Googling this.
So yeah, I mean, I think that that's probably the best way to handle it down here. And as far as what I ask for help, that just immediately makes me think of, and I don't know, have either of you seen the movie The Town with Ben Affleck?
Unfortunately.
So there's a scene in a quote from that movie that makes me think of this. This is which he walks into a room. He's like, "I need your help. I can't tell you what it is. You can never ask me about it later, and we're going to hurt some people." And then his friend's response is, "Whose car are we going to take?" So everybody's got friends like that.
Yes.
I feel like that. No questions asked. There we go. We've all incriminated ourselves on a podcast. So when one of us gets charged for murder, this will be brought up in evidence. Is that a bad thing to say in a song?
Taylor Swift reference.
Shout out to Taylor Swift, yes.
Florida, bing,
Sink
bing,
in the swamp.
Bing, bing.
Is that a bad thing to say in a song? Little did you know.
Oh, my Swifties. All right. Next question. Did you see the Edwina twist at the end coming?
Yes. Yeah. I feel like it was extremely obvious. You can ask Michael. I literally was like, here's my prediction. I said $10. Edwina murdered her husband, buried him under the cherry tree, and that's where all his little body parts are. And that is literally what happened.
She did. She totally called that.
I
didn't
did predict this one.
You did. So it was just me. I'm the only one that didn't. Yeah, I loved it. I thought that was a great part of the book to find out that that she was the OG and was trying to help, and the whole scene where she chases a fox off, and Sally walks back to their community garden, and Edwina's got like a freaking human hand, like no one's found my husband after all these years, but it's been 2 weeks and already there's a hand coming out.
She was basically like, you guys are not good
amateurs.
gardeners.
I know,
Yeah,
amateurs.
I loved it. So no, I didn't see the twist coming, but I really enjoyed that like final comedic little extra camaraderie we got there at the end, because even without that, I did feel like Edwina and Sally were becoming friends, even though I feel like she kind of saw Edwina as like that neighbor at the beginning. But I think their relationship that was another relationship that was fun to watch grow. But even before we found out that Edwina knew everything.
Yes. From the point that she said she didn't want her cherry tree memorial disturbed, I questioned like that. And then the fact that there was never any real mention of her significant other. I mean, there was a couple mentions. I don't know. I just felt like from the beginning, like once she mentioned the memorial tree and that she didn't want the soil disturbed there or something like that, I wasn't sure like if she would come forward about it or if they would find out about it in a different way and then like have that connection. So I didn't know how it would come about, but I did predict that would be the case.
Congratulations, Lauren, for being on the Barbara level of prediction. Normally we don't get to enjoy that.
I know. I rode that.
So I'm happy for you. I didn't get to join that club, but I'm happy for you. Let's see. Final question. What do you think happened to the women after the novel ended? I hope that Sally gets to like rebuild her relationship with her children in a way the way that she always wanted it to be. That was a really touching moment for her in the book when she realized that she was so worried that if this ever did come out and her kids found out about it, that they would just hate her and they'd never be able to live without their father. And at one point, it becomes clear to her that it's the other way around. Like they're going to be just fine, probably even better for it. And so I hope that she's living her best life with her children and jamming out to Charlie's daily songs still. I guess we didn't mention that Charlie's her son and he sends her a song every day to listen to. That was like their way of communication because that was his way of trying to let his mom know things without pissing off dad. So I hope they keep that going because that was fun to see her like jamming out to those songs full volume after her bastard husband died. I hope that the other women are also thriving, living their best life. I hope that the ones that were looking for work get back to work and start their careers back up that were stunted by the patriarchy. I hope that her Sally and Janie's friendship is thriving. I hope that the children are all well. I hope that Leela got into Oxford. I hope that would be, was it Oxford or Cambridge she was applying to? Do you remember the one that she didn't think she could get into?
Oxford.
I hope she got into Oxford and she's going there now, living her best life as her true self and not afraid of her father's horrible family. That was like both. That was one thing we didn't talk about either. Like the father's whole family in Pakistan started dying.
I love how she cackled. She was like, "They're all hiding and like dropping like flies," and she's like, "Ah ha ha ha!" And it's like it's funny, but also sad that you have to feel that way about your family.
It's literally, the people that she was doing that with was her uncle and her grandfather.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I hope they're all living their best lives. That's what I hope. My hope for them.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback off of that, I think, it's important to note that Sally, there were several mentions of Sally, like basically thinking that she had been hiding the domestic violence situation or like the turbulence from her kids. And so like they were just going to be so shocked at all of this stuff. And I think a lot of times parents think they're better at hiding things from their kids than they actually are. Kids are very perceptive and they listen and they understand more than we give them credit for. And so I feel like it was good to put that in there that like the kids are actually like, no, we know. And we're like checking in to make sure that you're okay and like that you're safe. And I think once she realized that they knew more than she thought that they did, then like she was able to kind of, I don't know, be more honest and open about the conversation or the situation. But like Michael said, I hope that they all just finally found peace in their respective situations and were able to also maintain their connection to each other, because I think they forged really good friendships during that whole situation. We obviously get a little glimpse of what Sally does after, starts to help other people that are in similar like domestic violence situations, or tries to, and really kind of seeks fulfillment in that way. And maybe some of them even, find love again if that's what they want, or that would be more of a healing situation, or maybe they prefer to live the single life. Whatever makes them happiest. They all deserve happiness after all of the things that they had to endure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, what y'all said. I just hope that they're living their best life, true to themselves, doing the things that they never thought they could because of their crap husbands, and just living the dream regardless of what that looks like. If that's working, helping others, going to school, going back to school, loving who they want to love, like all the things. I just hope that they're able to finally feel like they're free and that weightedness is off them and they can just be their true selves.
Preach.
I feel like it would kind of be hard to, since like there was no real like resolution, I guess, like I wonder if they would just kind of always be looking over their shoulder, kind of like waiting for evidence to come or something to happen to where that it could catch up with them. But hopefully
I don't know. Edwina's gotten away with it for years now, so I think they're good. Under her wings, I think they're golden. I think without Edwina, they would have been caught, clearly. But I think that's. I was wondering about that, but I think that last chapter was just to show like Edwina's got them. you know. And also I hope they continue their friendship. I hope they like do daily things together, and I just love the friendship, and I hope they continue it because it's beautiful.
Same. All right, let's talk about our individual scores for this one. Barbara, what did you give The Best Way to Bury Your Husband?
I gave it a 6.5. I honestly do. I know, had I gone into this book knowing what it was about more so, I think I would have given, the expectation of what it would have been different for me. I feel like the back of the book oversold the promise of like the lightness and the comedy aspect, and like Lauren mentioned, where it was you said something that was so good, like it was dark, the comedy with the dark, I don't know, whatever you said earlier, that's how
darkness
I felt.
with comedy weaves throughout versus light, like comedy with
darkness throughout. I was expecting comedy with darkness throughout, not darkness with comedy throughout. So I think I do find it's a disservice of whoever typed that up or whoever wrote in like dark comedy. I think it does the book a disservice because as someone like me, I was expecting something, I got something else because of that. Like if I didn't have that, I would have felt a lot differently about the book. The only thing that I did really struggle with, regardless of it, is I feel like it was very slow and dragged quite a bit in the middle.
Yeah, that's our opinions are very similar for this book, Barbara. I liked it. I thought it was a good story that needed to be told. I did think it got slow at times, and I also think I would have probably given it a different rating had I not had a different expectation for the amount of comedy that would be in it. So my score was a 6 out of 10 for this one.
I enjoyed it overall. I gave it a 7. I think like I was viewing it more as dark with comedy, so I don't think I read it in the same way that you guys did, because I was expecting it to be a little bit darker. And I listened to it, so that may play a role also in like pacing, but it was a pretty quick listen. And so I felt like, were there scenes where I felt like maybe it was dragging on a little bit? Yeah, but overall I felt like it was fine. But that's just me.
Hey, I'm average. Yay.
Yes, the group score is Barbara's score. She threatened earlier this morning, Lauren, because the group score was so easy to calculate, to go in and give it like a 6.347 or something just to piss me off.
She would.
I think she was really going to, and then I was like, you better
I
not.
would not. I know how you feel about it. Jeez. Can't that even joke?
Realistically, I wouldn't have cared if you did. I would have made a joke about it like I have every other time. It's been like some random ass decimal for the average because of your scores. Not just you. Lauren also leaves sometimes complicated decimal scores. So make sure you're following Badass Literature Society for free in your favorite podcast app. Give us a rating and leave us a review if they allow you to. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media. Our handle on both Instagram and Facebook is @BadassLitPod.
Have feedback about today's episode? You can contact us by writing to badassliteraturesociety@gmail.com. You can also send us a DM or leave a comment on Instagram or Facebook.
As always, thank you so much for listening. I'm Michael.
I'm Barbara.
And I'm Lauren.
And remember, This is a self-help guide to how to bury your husband.
Yes, an addendum to this, when I recommended it, my mom's book club, one of our members is an attorney and has a very dry sense of humor, and she was requesting it at the library because it's so new. So you can put it on like a library request list, and the little old lady behind the counter was asking her like, oh, what is the genre? And she said self-help, like just deadpan, straight face. And the lady behind her, I guess, was like clutching pearls, like that sort of reaction. And then she's amazing. Like, no, it's fiction. So it was really funny when she reads that. Self-help.
That is amazing.
I would like to meet her. She sounds fun.
So I guess really along that same line, for people that are some reason still here at the end of the episode like this, if they tell you that I'm out sick and I'm gone for multiple episodes,
he is sick.
Police.
No, he's just sick. Just sick.
Call the police.
He's got a cough.
Tell them to listen to this episode. Specifically that question that Barbara answered about how she'd get rid of a body.
Oh, yes. I didn't give anything away. My secrets are mine to keep.
And with that, bye.
Bye.